right, well, I have 3 o'clock, so in the interest of everyone's time, we will go ahead and get started. My name is Alicia Heislip. I'm the Senior Director of Public Policy here at ACTE, and we are so excited that so many of you have been able to join us for today's virtual orientation of our National Policy Seminar. We wanted to schedule this year because we know the meeting will look a lot different than it has in person the last few years, but still wanted to make sure that everyone was as prepared and ready to participate and get as much out of the meeting as possible. And so today we're going to go through just a few things. We'll do an overview of the event agenda and speakers, provide you a little bit of information about navigating the brand new NPS attendee website, share some of the background materials that you can expect to receive through that website. And then we'll transition into more of the nuts and bolts of scheduling Hill meetings with your federal policymakers and tips for conducting those meetings. It's great to see so many familiar faces. I know many of you have attended NPS and been dedicated to our federal advocacy efforts for years. So we're excited to have you back with us this year for our virtual conference. And while we really wish we could be in person in DC and all together, I think this will provide an opportunity to still get the CTE message out to policymakers and hopefully to give all of you an update on where things are in Washington and the information that you need to be strong advocates throughout the year. So we're going to start today by talking a little bit about the NPS website. And sometime later today, every person that's registered for NPS will receive an email with login instructions. In that email will be a link to the login page of the website and instructions with the credentials that you'll need to access the page. The event website is set up with all of the information you're going to need to successfully participate in the meeting, including all of the materials that would normally be found in the legislative handbook that you would receive on site, as well as the access to the individual sessions, the links that you'll use to enter the meeting on the day of the event. Some of those session links are there. Others might be added as the event gets closer. One thing I will say is I'm going to show you the website in just a minute. I'll switch my screen. Not all of the information is populated yet. Things are happening very quickly in Congress, so we haven't finalized all of those background pieces, but you'll see the bulk of the information you need, particularly to schedule Hill visits, is ready and waiting for you, and the other pieces will be added constantly over the time between now and the event. So you'll have access to all of those pieces really much earlier than you normally would receive the notebooks at NPS. So with that, let me switch screens and I will show you the website. All right, so let me move it over. Okay, so everybody should be seeing what will be the landing page of the NPS website once you have moved past the login and entered your credentials. This is our virtual event homepage. On the homepage, you'll just find some basic information. There is also a link to the webinar we produced in January. This is a great background. Alicia, if you haven't.
Alicia, it's only showing like the center of a page. It's not showing the full page.
Let me try again.
There we go.
Is it better now?
Yeah,
okay. Okay. Thank you, Lauren. Never know with technology. So this video is a great background to watch if you weren't able to view it live. It provides an overview of all of the changes we expect to occur that have occurred, and then the policy agenda that we expect to be considered during the 117th Congress. After the webinar today, we're going to record what you're listening to, make it available for anyone who wasn't able to attend. And the video from today's recording is going to take the place here on the homepage, but I'll show you where you can access this 117th Congress video in the days to come. There's also down at the bottom some social media feeds and other information that you might want to use to stay connected during the National Policy Seminar. So going back up to the top, you'll find 4 main tabs once you get the login. The first is the agenda tab, and that's where I want to spend a little bit of time to go through what you'll find on this page. So up at the top will be some pre-recorded content. This is where you'll find that previewing the 117th Congress link, and then you'll also find another link to today's orientation if you're trying to direct somebody that missed today there. In the next week or so, we'll also be uploading 2 introductory videos about 2 of the main pieces of legislation that we're talking about this year. The first is the Higher Education Act. That's the top education issue that's on Congress's docket to be considered this year. So if, perhaps you work at the K-12 level or you're not as familiar with all of the pieces and parts of HEA, this presentation, it'll be pre-recorded video that you can come and watch, will provide you background information so that you're ready to jump into the content of the meeting. We'll also have a Perkins 101 presentation for anybody who's new to working with CTE policy, not quite sure how money flows. I know many of you, as I see the list of participants, are familiar with Perkins, but in case you have folks coming that aren't, that video will be great for them. Then if you scroll down, you'll find links and information on all of the live content that we'll have during the week of NPS. So first I want to start with Monday, and this is where we have the bulk of the content that we'll be providing. So from 12 o'clock Eastern to 5 o'clock Eastern, we have sessions scheduled and live content, just like we're Zooming today. The opening session is going to look much like the opening session in person at NPS does. We're going to kick things off with updates from the national leadership team. And then our keynote speaker is going to be David Castanaghi, who is a political strategist and former Capitol Hill chief of staff. He's going to share a broad overview about the political dynamic in DC and how that will impact what issues come before Congress, the dynamics between the parties. This will be a very similar presentation to what you might normally hear during our opening general session at NPS. Throughout the day, we'll then start to narrow the content as we go. The second panel will be a panel discussion of other education and workforce development experts in federal policy. These are colleagues of ours that we work closely with in coalitions and partnerships to advocate for the broad spectrum of education and workforce development. We have Sarah Abernathy, the Executive Director of the Committee for Education Funding, David Boehm from the American Association of Community Colleges, Emmanuel Gilroy from the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities, and Katie Spiker from the National Skills Coalition. And you'll probably recognize some of these organizations as ones we have worked with for years and partner with on a variety of issues. They'll be able to provide you with that overarching piece about what is going to happen this year related to education policy and labor policy and how those issues are likely to move forward. Then we'll take a break. For some of you in some time zones, it might be a lunch break or an afternoon snack break. And we'll come back in the afternoon with some more content that looks a lot like what you would see in person. We'll first have our congressional staff panel. And this will include staff from the relevant committees on Capitol Hill, the staff that really work directly on these issues and can share not only what they expect to see on policy this year, but also what they would like to hear from you as advocates and the information you need and the best way to work with them. Following that, we'll have a session on advocacy strategies, best practices in influencing federal policy. We're going to shift Zoom platforms for this session. So earlier in the day, we'll be on a Zoom webinar platform. When we transition to the best practices for influencing federal policy, we'll be in a Zoom meeting platform. And we'll start with the whole group together with all of these speakers for some broad overview content. And then we'll break up into breakout rooms, and you'll have the opportunity to choose which of the topics that each of them are going to share more about that you'd like to participate in. Katie Fitzgerald and Brittany Kennedy from Advanced CTE are going to be talking more in depth about how to use social media to influence policymakers at all levels, not just at the federal level. Katie Brown from the Association of Community College Trustees will be sharing, and Mike, I can't remember offhand what Katie's going to be sharing about.
Yeah, so Katie will be discussing messaging for meetings and kind of your approach on certain legislation and policy priorities.
Oh, that's right. Thank you very much. And then the last speaker, Alex Perry from the College and High School Alliance, is going to talk about working in coalitions and partnerships to get your message across. So after that session, Mike and I will be on tap to do the final Hill visit preparation, go over all of the messages and the key talking points that we hope you'll share in your meetings. And so this is the page that you'll come to, and you'll be able to read more in depth once we get started once you get the login information for the website, and you'll be able to link to each of the sessions on the Monday of the event right from this page. A few other things on the schedule that I want to point out. The first are state meetings. For those of you who have attended NPS in person, you know that we normally have what we call state planning roundtables at the end of the first day of the conference, where you're able to sit around a table and in the ballroom, maybe with a placard with your state name on it in the center of the table, to plan for your Hill visits during the rest of the week, to organize who's attending which meeting, who's going to lead off, what talking points you're going to use, all of those pieces. We wanted to replicate that as close as possible, or at least provide the opportunity for states to have time to replicate that during the meeting. So we have been working with the state ACTE leaders to sign up for time slots to host state planning time on Monday evening or on Tuesday morning. You only see a few states here at this point in time. More states will be added. Several states are still working with their leadership teams to pick which time slot they would like or determine exactly what will work best for them. But these will be informal opportunities for all the participants from a single state to get together, compare notes on your Hill visits, compare notes on the policymakers that you're likely to meet with, and get organized for any visits that you have during the rest of the week. We'll also, if it turns out that your state doesn't have a meeting, maybe there's only one or two people coming from your state, you're welcome, of course, to have your own conversation at a different time. And we'll also be scheduling a general Q&A session for anybody that isn't in one of these state meetings that wants to just pop in and ask a few questions of our policy staff. We'll also be popping into the state meetings just like we would in the roundtables in the ballroom to check in on everyone. So this will be hopefully a really fun part of the policy seminar to allow everyone to get together. The next event I want to highlight is on Thursday, February 25th, so a little bit later in the week. We are hosting a virtual tour of one of the area CTE centers in Ohio as a substitute for our Hill reception. Obviously not quite the same. We won't be eating and drinking together, but we did want to provide an opportunity during the week of NPS to see some students in action. This event will be open to all of the attendees of the National Policy Seminar, but more importantly, it will be open to congressional staff, to education media, and to our partners at other national organizations. So just like you in the past have invited the Hill staff that you meet with to attend the reception on Capitol Hill during NPS, you'll have the opportunity, and we'll provide you with information that you can share with your policymakers, the staff you meet with during NPS, if they want to want to attend this virtual tour of Butler Tech. And we'll also, from our office, be sending out invitations to all the staff on Capitol Hill so that they know it's happening and can come. And since nobody can see a CTE or program in person right now, or it's very difficult to see one in person because many schools have restrictions on visitors, even if they're open, this will be a great way for congressional staff who may not have seen firsthand all of the things we do in CTE to get a taste of what that looks like. So that'll be, I think, a really exciting event towards the end of our NPS week. There are going to be, you'll see this tab says coming soon right now. This is one of the things that will still be filled in. There are a couple of different groups that are having additional meetings during the week of NPS. The National Association of Ag Educators is having a special meeting on Tuesday evening. The Career Academy section, partnering with the 4 Next Generation Learning Communities, is having an event, I think, on Tuesday afternoon. And we'll be posting all of the information here. Of course, the people involved will receive those invitations directly, but we'll have it here for you just to make sure that it's easy to find during the week of NPS. So that is all of the content on the agenda. I'm going to pause really quick and check the chat just to see if there are any questions about the agenda. And scrolling through, and also if you do have any questions, feel free to pop in and ask while I check this real quick, or type a question in the chat before we move to the next step. Oh, I do see one question in the chat about how should business and industry partners participate if they come, and should they attend the state planning time? So I would say if it is a business that is unique to your state, so a business leader is coming on behalf of an employer in your community or your state to participate in the Hill meetings, then they should definitely attend the relevant state planning time for the member offices that they plan to visit. If they're coming more just to learn about CTE policy and are not planning on going on Hill visits, or don't see their state listed on the list of state meetings, then certainly anybody can feel free to pop into the open Q&A that we'll have on the list to ask questions or bat around ideas about the best way to approach member offices. Let's see. Oh, and I see one more question about the deadline to register. So we are taking registrations for this event right up until the time it starts. And so you have the full 2 weeks left to register for NPS. The one disadvantage on registering a little bit later is you won't have access to the website and all the materials until you are registered, and then you'll get all of your login credentials. But otherwise, we are happy to have you. That does bring up another important point that I want to mention, and that is that while this webinar is being recorded and we'll have the pre-recorded content, the HEA 101 and Perkins 101 that I mentioned, the bulk of the content for NPS will not be recorded, because so many of the speakers that we have coming have asked for the conversations to be off the record, particularly our Hill staff partners. And so those sessions will not be able to be recorded on the day of the event. So just one note I wanted to throw out. All right, so don't see any other questions at this point. So I want to show you 2 more pages of the website just so you know where to find things before I turn it over to Mike. So first, our Hill Visit resources page. So this is where you will find all of the content that used to be in the notebook under sections like Hill Visit background, leave behinds, general advocacy resources, those types of things. And we've bucketed it into 4 sections. Information you might need for scheduling your visits to Capitol Hill, information to prepare once you have your visits scheduled, some things to use during the visit under this Conducting Visits tab, and then some follow-up activities. Obviously, the most important right now is scheduling. those visits to Capitol Hill. One advantage of the virtual platform format is there's a lot more flexibility in when and how you do that. So we have a set of overview instructions. I'd encourage you to start there. And then you can use the database to find your member of Congress, particularly if you have somebody newly elected. We have also compiled information on the schedulers in each office and their email address, as well as included a template meeting request letter that you can use if you haven't ever reached out to the office before to schedule a meeting. One important note that I'll mention is that some state associations schedule their own meetings for the entire state. So the state executive director or state president or legislative chair will get everything organized and reach out to the offices themselves. So we suggest in the overview instructions, and I want to reiterate today, that make sure you reach out to your state ACTE leaders to check to see if that's the case before you set up your individual visits, if you don't already know. Some states, you already know exactly how it works and can move forward. But if you're not sure about how it works in your state, we encourage you to reach out to those state leaders to check before you start scheduling visits. After you get your visit scheduled, and Mike's going to talk a lot more about that, you'll be able to use these preparation tools to help you prepare. And then the talking points and leave behinds for your meetings. Our leave behinds are almost done. We just needed to wait for a couple more things to fall into place to make sure all of our messaging was in tune with what was actually happening in Congress. I would say those should be up on the website by the end of this week. So you'll have them well in advance of the meeting, and you can download those. That way you can email them to your offices and supplement them with existing state and local resources as well. The other page on the website I want to just briefly mention is this background materials page. It is not completely fleshed out. We will be finishing this up over the next few days and getting all of the information you need into the website. But we wanted to go ahead and give everyone access, particularly to the information on scheduling Hill visits. But this will give you an idea about what it's going to look like. There's tabs across the top that correspond to the types of things that used to be tabs in your NPS notebook. So you can kind of see where we're going here. And then on each tab, you'll find the types of resources and background information that you would have normally received in person at the event. So list of committee members and caucus members and information on the leadership teams on this tab. The funding tab is coming soon, but here we'll post background information on the federal budget and appropriations process, any progress that has been made by the time we get to NPS, which is not likely to be too much, but documents and resources and things that have been released that will help you provide context to the conversation. So this information coming soon, but wanted to make sure you knew that this is where you'll go to find all of those pieces as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint. And then check the chat real quick. All right, don't see any specific questions, but some great tips from some of our longtime CTE advocates. So definitely want to take advantage of those caucus members. And we'll also, one of the leave behinds I'll just mention is going to be an invitation that you can give to any members of Congress that you have that are not on the CTE caucus, that includes, contact information of who they can reach out to. So we definitely want to thank those members of Congress who are participating in the caucus and invite more to join. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mike Matthews, our government relations manager, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the environment on the Hill in this virtual space, as well as how to schedule your visits and get prepared for those advocacy opportunities. So Mike, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Alicia. Yeah, kind of just to go over before we get into kind of how to schedule a meeting and some tips, figured it might be useful for you guys to kind of just get a general understanding of what's going on in the Capitol right now. Obviously, the buildings are still closed to the general public, not only for tours, but meetings. And it's a mixture of, obviously, with the pandemic going on, of health and security measures. Members are still in person for some hearings and to vote, although they have the option to not only attend hearings virtually, but they can also vote via proxy. So the attendance is less than normal, but many of the members are still there, while some are taking advantage of working remotely while still in DC. With that being said, I think conservatively saying about 90%, if not more, staffers are actually working virtually from home within the DC area. Each office may have a staffer in person, but it's really up to their discretion. A lot of the members are kind of listening to the advice from the attending physician. But usually when their boss is physically in person for a hearing, or sometimes for votes, they will physically accompany their boss, depending on the situation. With all that being said, I think staffers are actually busier right now than during normal times. They're still taking meetings, working on legislation, preparing for hearings, doing all the normal things that they tend to do, but they're also kind of dealing with this backdrop of the global pandemic, the economic recession. On the Senate side, we have the impeachment trial going on, and some other things that typically don't happen in a given time. Hold on one second, let me.
Oh, can you hear me better now, everybody? Awesome. Yeah, so basically staffers are still doing everything they normally do. It's just there's a few other things that are kind of in the backdrop that are making them a little busier than normal. So from a meeting standpoint, they tend to generally be the same. One thing I would definitely say is they should be a little more focused and concise than normal. Their schedules are obviously busier, so we generally have less time to meet with them. So the more concise you can be, the better. Just to reiterate what Alicia said, some state associations coordinate the scheduling of their visits together. So please contact your state leader to see if there's appointments beforehand before you make any individual appointments. If you don't know who your state leader is, we have a state leaders directory on our website. Please visit that and find out through that. So I think obviously the first and most important thing is figuring out who your legislator actually is. If you already know that, you can obviously skip this step. But if you don't, we have an action center on our website where you can enter your home address and zip code, and it will give you who your two senators are, who your member of Congress is on the House side, and also some background information on each of the three members. So obviously, review the background information on the members as well. It'll tell you their committee assignments, where they're from, some past employment history, what they did beforehand. All of that knowledge is definitely beneficial when you're going to meet with an office, especially when you're trying to tie their past experiences and kind of their work in Congress to CTE. So once you figure out who your member is, contacting the office is the next step. Kind of like Alicia already said, we figured we'd skip the step where you guys have to call the office and ask for the scheduler's contact information. So we have all of that already on the website for you. So once you get that, you'll send them a meeting request. You can either use the template that we have or use your own template. So with that being said, you want to give it about 2 weeks. I know we're kind of at the 2-week mark now, but I would like to mention, although we would love your meeting to happen during the week of NPS or in the month of CTE month, if you can't, actually us being virtual allows more flexibility, like Alicia mentioned there. So we really just want you to start building that relationship with your members of Congress. So between now or whenever you have time or you can fit it in your members' time is great for us. If you are sending your own letter, all of this information is already in the template that we have. So you can use that as a reference, but always remember to mention that you're a constituent. I would say 95% of offices, if not all offices, don't meet with people that aren't constituents of theirs unless they're kind of a business leader or an important statewide figure. Offer multiple dates and times. Like I said, they're really busy right now and a lot of schedules are in flux with the pandemic, the impeachment, and everything else going on. So the more flexibility, the better chance of you getting a meeting. In the letter, discuss what you want to meet about. You're obviously introducing yourself and the member to CTE, kind of talking about the critical important issues that are going on right now within CTE and the backdrop of that, obviously the pandemic and everything else. Usually they're going to ask you that, so this just skips a step by putting it up front. Also, offer to meet with the staff if the member is not available. Obviously, we always want to meet with the member of Congress, but a lot of times they're too busy. So meeting with a staffer, coming from a former staffer, I would say it's equally as important, if not more important. The staff really does decide a lot of the policy direction of the office, just because the member doesn't have the bandwidth to kind of figure everything out themselves. So they really do rely on the people they employ. So that is a great way to build a relationship with the office and then through the staff or the member. And again, just to simplify the process, keep from the back and forth, and to also increase the likelihood of you getting the meeting. Indicate what your platform preference is, whether it's going to be via phone call or a web-based platform like Zoom. And if you do offer one of those, whatever you offer, also provide a link or a phone number that they'll be able to contact you at. Again, just to skip a step. And I would also mention their Zoom fatigue with staffers is really real right now. They're at their homes, so they don't want to have their camera on. So if you do have a meeting preference, I think you'd have a better likelihood of getting through by doing a phone call. And also it'll give you a higher likelihood of meeting with the member. Going back to their schedules being so in flux right now, they'll be able to take their phone and kind of grab it on the go. Whereas if it's a web-based platform, they have to be locked down on their schedule for a specific length of time. So you might have a better chance of getting them on the phone. So after your meeting request, again, the theme of Congress right now is everything's busy and in flux. So give them time. A lot of offices really do scheduling meetings once, maybe twice a week during busy weeks. So if you don't hear back, just give it a week and then email and call to confirm that they received the request. If it is accepted, confirm the meeting details, obviously the date, the time, who you're meeting with, the platform information, the list of attendees if you are meeting as an association or a group, and any leave behind materials. It's always beneficial to give the staffers or the member of Congress the leave behind materials ahead of time, just so they can read up on the issue, get caught up a little bit, and if they have any questions, and it allows them to make it more personalized, because then they can kind of figure out how it ties into their district and what's the importance of it. And then obviously add it to your calendar or the other attendees' calendar. As a former staffer, I really didn't enjoy getting invites from people off the Hill just because it messed up my calendar and things like that. So if the meeting isn't accepted, if the member can't meet with you, obviously a staffer is usually offered in their stead. If not, ask if a staffer is available. And if no one is available through the multiple dates and times that you offered, ask for the education staffer's contact information. Send them an introduction email to establish the relationship. Attach any background materials, either the ones we have or ones that kind of lay out your program, your state and local specific information, and offer yourself as a resource. When I was on the Hill, I had 10 to 12 different policy issues in my portfolio. So you really don't have the time to become an expert in everything. So you really do rely on the relationships that you establish off the Hill. So if something came up within education, I had a handful of people, maybe 4 or 5 people that I went to for everything to kind of get what they think of the issue, what the importance is. So you really want to become that for the staffer. So again, offer yourself as a resource and ask for a meeting time in the future. So the meeting process, just from the 30,000 foot level, obviously prepare before you go, review the materials so you have a good understanding of the issues, how it affects kind of your state and local area, coordinate the roles with the other participants. This is easier to do when you're in person. You can kind of use body language to go off each other. It's not really the case over the phone or via Zoom. So make sure that you have a leader, somebody kind of dictating and directing the meeting. Arrive early to kind of get ahead of any potential technology issues like I had with my headphones. You want to test that kind of stuff out beforehand. And then during the meeting, obviously introduce yourself, mention that you're attending the National Policy Seminar with ACTE during CTE month, cover the 2 or 3 priority topics that you nailed down, and then obviously at the end, thank them for their time. And then after the meeting, take a screenshot if you're on Zoom or tweet that you met with the member, thank them, and then hashtag us. The hashtag is NPSCTE21. And then it's always beneficial to write a thank you letter. So within a couple of days of the meeting, we have 3 templates that we did for various scenarios. So one is if you meet with a member of Congress, a thank you to them. The second one is a thank you letter to the member of Congress if you met with the staffer, kind of saying, thank you for allowing your office to meet with me. Your staffer XY was great. This is what we covered. We look forward to establishing this relationship in the future. And then the third one is if you just met with a staffer and it goes directly to the staffer, thanking them. And then obviously follow up on any promises that you make. If you promise to send them any school specific information, district specific information, anything like that, always follow up and make sure that you get them that information so they know you can be relied on in the future. So, and then this is just kind of the top 10 things to remember during a meeting. Always be prepared. You want to establish and then strengthen a relationship with your legislator and his or her staff. You should obviously prepare thoroughly, be polite, and be specific as possible, and never threaten. I always say that just because CTE is really one of the last real bipartisan issues on the Hill. It's really polarized right now, and I think kind of given the backdrop of the pandemic, we're still down 10 million jobs than we were pre-pandemic. I think a lot of people are starting to realize the importance of CTE and workforce in the recovery aspect of this. So just remember that in the back of your mind that this is a real bipartisan issue, and we want to make sure that we have everybody supportive as possible. Then the second one, I already went over this a little bit, but accept staff meetings. Don't be concerned if you end up meeting with a staffer. In many cases, like I said, this proves to be equally or more productive. They're really the eyes and ears of the legislator and of a lot of influence over the policy decisions. Number 3, budget your time. Be concise, but cover all the points that you wish to make. In general, it's best to address a limited number of issues. I always do 3 maximum. So most meetings last anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. So obviously budget your time wisely and leave time at the end for a discussion. Number 4 is be personal. Explain why the issue is important to you and to the people in your state or district. A lot of times there aren't really that many members with CTE in their background. So a lot of them are really new to the issue, which is great because it allows you the opportunity to kind of mold their opinion on it. So a lot of the times they don't really understand how it works within kind of the ecosphere of their district or state. So you want to allow them to empathize with the issue. So giving them your personal story about whether it's a student, your path in CTE, or the benefits that your program has to that area, it really allows them to conceptualize the program and its importance. And it really allows them to make it easier for them to support the issue moving forward. And then obviously explain the consequences that adverse actions or failure to act will have on individuals in your state, city, or town. Again, given the backdrop of we're in a current recession due to the pandemic, by failing to address the healthcare workforce shortages and these other workforce shortages that we have seen, it obviously has real world consequences with, unfortunately, people passing away due to it. So these programs can really be a good way to prevent that moving forward. Number 5 is be specific. Cite sources of independent support for your position, whether it's opinion polls, studies, the white papers that we have on our website. We'll have a lot of this in the background materials. And then number 6, if you don't know you don't need to know everything. Don't be afraid to say you don't know the specific answer. Offer to have one of us as an ACTE staffer follow up with any additional information, or if it's about your specific program, you can always say, I can get back to you on that. Sometimes that's a good thing because it allows you to have another connection with that member's office and continue to build that relationship. Number 7, always have an ask, so request action. After you make all your points, request a specific action, and don't be afraid to ask for the legislator's position. Whether it's getting them onto the CTE caucus, supporting a specific piece of legislation, voting a certain way, whatever the ask may be, you always should have that ask. And since time is limited, a lot of the times I always front load it, saying like, due to the current pandemic, this is obviously critically important, and then kind of go into the why after that. Leave contact information. So leave your name, address, email, maybe not your address, email address, affiliation, telephone number, really any information that they can use to get back to you. Again, you want to become a resource for them and somebody that they rely on when it comes to CTE policy. Stay in touch, follow up the visit, like I said, thanking the member of Congress or the staffer, and then in that email, briefly summarize the major issues discussed. And then be sure to follow up, like I said, with any commitments that you've made and provide any additional information that they may have requested. And keep in touch with them and their staff occasionally, and offer for them to come visit your program, obviously, when that becomes allowed again. One of the best ways to keep in touch with them is continue to stay up on policy. So if there's another bill that comes up that touches on CTE or education, always shoot a line, be like, hey, this is a great bill. Glad to see that you're on it. Thank them for co-sponsoring things. Thank them for voting a certain way. And these kind of small actions really do add up and are really beneficial in building that relationship. And then obviously at the end, remember the staying power of relationships. The staying power in relationships are key to accomplishing anything. So can really strive to maintain good communication with your member of Congress.
Oh, come on.
And then here at the end, if you have any additional questions that we may not get to now or between now and NPS or now in the meeting, please feel free to reach out to Alicia or I.
Yes, definitely. I was just answering a couple of questions in the chat that I want to flag for folks. Someone asked about the CTE caucus list, and I put the link in the chat to the current caucus information page on the regular ACT website, but there'll also be a link off the NPS page to that caucus information. You know, once you get on the NPS site, it'll be right there and ready for you. And I'll echo again, we are here to help. We want to make this brand new virtual visit process as smooth as possible, and the whole experience of NPS as smooth as possible for everyone to participate in. So feel free to reach out at any time. And we do have a few minutes left this afternoon. If anybody has additional questions, we'll keep an eye on the chat here, but also feel free if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question. We're happy to help. All right, well, don't see any questions coming in, so I think we'll wrap up, but you all know how to get in touch with us if something does come up over the next 2 weeks. As I mentioned at the beginning, you should get that link to log on to the NPS website in your email very soon. And once you get on the site, you'll be able to poke around and see all the materials that are there. And hopefully that will get you going on scheduling your Hill visits and everything else you need for the meeting. If anything is missing or you additional resources that you need, just let us know and we can make sure to get those to you. So thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you in just 2 short weeks on February 22nd at our full virtual event. So have a great afternoon.